Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube station at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I am so happy to welcome back one of my favorite all-time guests. Gary Gastman is here. He's the executive director of Link House, and he's a licensed psychologist. And he's here to talk to us about an upcoming, very exciting anniversary Link House is about to have, and Mental Health Awareness Month. So, Gary, first of all, welcome so much, and thank you for visiting the morning show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having me live in person. It's great.
Oh, I know. It's exciting, isn't it?
Last few times we met, we were on Zoom and working through screens. This is much better.
Yes, I realized this week that you've been on the show a number of times through the pandemic, though, and it's all been through Zoom. So it's just wonderful to be back in the studio and meet you in person.
That's
Gary.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So, well, Gary, this year marks the 50th anniversary of Link House. So first of all, congrats on that.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty distinctive.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that to mark that anniversary, that perhaps you could walk us through the organization's founding, its history, and how it's changed over the years, because I know it's grown a lot. And also, what do you have planned to celebrate this big anniversary?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking. So, like many nonprofits, it was grassroots oriented, and a group of concerned citizens back in 1972. Vietnam War was just winding down, and there was a gentleman named John Ashford Link, who was a citizen and a resident in Newburyport, who came back from the Vietnam War and had alcohol, could not shake his disease of alcoholism, and they would find him drunk in various parts of town, and the citizens, a few key business owners, said, we have to do something. There was no resources anywhere, even between Boston and Newburyport.
Oh, wow.
So they got together and said, we need to do something. They raised a little bit of money. They worked with the Institution for Savings. They worked with the State House, and they hobbled together a little bit of money to create a grant to buy a building to help John Ashford Link, because they realized, in addition to him, there's other people struggling with alcoholism.
Yeah, lots.
And that's how it got founded. Just a very simple, we have a problem in our community, we need to address it. Mm-hmm. And that was in May this month, in 1972.
Wow,
so
isn't that something?
Literally our 50th anniversary this month. Yeah,
that is remarkable.
Yeah.
And what a great story that
Yeah.
people got concerned and expressed their compassion.
Right.
Rather than going judgmental, they went helpful.
Yes.
And were able then to start Link House.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about, it's been 50 years then of growth and changes. Tell us a little bit about how the organization has evolved.
Sure. So let me just, in terms of stepping back a minute, so we're a nonprofit, which means that our funds are received from the state to some degree, from donations, from treatment fees. So it's a combination of various ways, but it's, like every nonprofit, you have to find your money every year and make sure you have enough to cover everything. Right. And so we're just winding down our fiscal year next month, and it's we're good. We're in the black.
Good, yay!
We're in the black. And so this organization is run by an executive director, myself, and a board of directors, volunteer board. And I think that's the heart of it. Is the board has. Part of the reasons for the success, in addition to our staff, is the board of directors has been a consistent force throughout the 50 years in helping shape the direction of the agency and supporting the executive director and helping to find money and raise awareness. So that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a sign of real investment on the part of the community to have your board of directors engaged and involved, and you're solvent.
Yes, and I've met with some former board members that were in the organization 20, 30 years ago, and at that time they would take the envelopes, throw them on the ground, and write which bills can we afford to pay this month. Fortunately through prudent savings, strategic planning, good investments, we're on solid footing. But it shifts year to year in terms of how our funding is received.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure. Yeah.
So.
Well, I know, Gary, also that Link House has expanded its mission over the years. From starting out, as you described, as an addiction services agency, but I think your mission is now much broader than that.
Yes, it is. So we stay true to our roots. So our roots are grounded in treating folks with substance abuse issues. whether that's alcohol, obviously now opioid issues, cocaine back in the 80s and 90s. So we've stayed true to that. But what our agency, through myself, our staff, and our board, we look towards what's the mission in the community? Where's the need?
Yes.
Where does it hurt? And so for me, one of the strategic plans was to support the current group of residents and future residents with their mental well-being.
Yeah.
So while we still provide substance use services, we've expanded into behavioral health services by opening a clinic in Amesbury in January of 2020. So seconds before the pandemic hit. Who knew that we were positioning ourselves well to support the community? So we've expanded in that way, and we have close to 550 active patients in that service that weren't getting services prior. So
Gary,
that's tremendous.
That's exactly the adjective I was going to use.
Yes. So then, we recognized the need was there. We recognized that we could afford to do it, and the board was fully supporting of it. So we said, let's try it. So we're at the Boston North Tech Park. It's a very professional office setting, and it's a respected environment for both the clients to get services and our staff to work.
Yeah.
And we also, one of the other needs in the local community is sober housing in general, but specifically for women. There's a paucity of sober housing in the Commonwealth for women. So that, again, was in our mission to go to where the need was. So in March of 2020, so 5 days before the pandemic officially hit, we opened WISH, which is Women's Independent Sober Housing, here in Newburyport. And so we have permanent housing for 16 women who are in long-term sobriety. And to me, that's one of my proudest accomplishments professionally, to be able to provide that service where folks can call their homes home and stay as long as they want. And it's relatively inexpensive as compared to other sober houses, but especially trying to find low-income housing in Newburyport, which doesn't really exist.
No, it doesn't. But that doesn't mean it's not badly needed.
No,
and
right,
so it's a great story. The Link House story is really wonderful and inspiring, Gary, because from its inception, what Link House has done is spotted a need and then moved in to fill it.
Right.
Because there were gaps there prior to Link House moving in to fill it. And so that's a proud tradition that you're continuing to this day.
That's right.
So
and
that's
also
really
that we've remained independent, which I think is important because it's our budget is, when I came on board 7-point-something years ago, we had a $1.2 million budget. I just finished FY23's budget. We're at $3 million now. And so what that tells me is that we're growing, but we're also filling a greater need in the community, and it allows us to stay independent and not have to worry about where funding might come from or can we afford to stay in business.
Yes, and you can make sure that your client-centered focus, you can remain true to that focus and those values and that mission, which is just a wonderful thing to do.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, so how are you going to celebrate?
Yeah, we're going to get balloons and have a party. So we are gearing up for right now for a gala event in September at the Blue Ocean, September 22nd. So in 2019, we had a big event. We had 410 people at the Blue Ocean with Governor Baker's keynote speaker and Jimmy. I was going to say Jimmy Kimmel, that's not right. Anyway, we had an MC at the event, Jimmy Tingle.
Yes. I was going to say Fallon, and I thought, no, that's wrong.
I knew it was Jimmy.
I knew it was,
So we're trying to replicate that magic and have another large event, because it's now, time's right. Post-pandemic, I think people feel comfortable to come back into the room. So we just started our events committee gearing up for that, to identify our sponsors, to start to do the save the date, and to line up who's going to be part of this event. So that's what we're gearing towards now. So that will be a big, I think it serves two purposes for us. One is I'm always trying to promote the agency externally. I think it's important that people know what Link House does and who we are in the community. So by having an event, you get media attention, you bring awareness to the community about the needs of what we do for our mission, but also it brings in money, hopefully. So a gala event brings in a certain amount of money above costs that helps our bottom line.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, that sounds like a wonderful event.
Yeah.
And, people will be ready to celebrate Link House, but people are just ready to celebrate in general these days, I think.
Yes.
So that's wonderful,
Yeah.
Gary. And
Yeah.
presumably there'll be more publicity about it soon.
Right.
And on your website, people will be able to find information about it as it gets closer to September.
That is correct, right. We haven't yet pulled the veil off yet. We're still doing the planning stage to make sure we can pull it off.
Yeah.
But we have a URL on our website that's ready to be launched soon that we'll build on that with more information as we have things to talk about. Yeah.
Well, very exciting.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's a big,
yeah.
It's important that we have these events. Like most nonprofits, you need to showcase who you are in the community and bring everybody together.
And 50 is a big deal.
Yes. It really is. I tell our staff and our board that, how many 50-year-old organizations are there that are not a bank or a library or an insurance company?
That's right.
So it's a big testament to the executive directors before me, the staff that have been with us for 50 years, and our board of directors over the many years.
It is.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, well, Gary, we also mentioned in the intro, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, May. And it seems like a good time to reflect upon the mental health crisis that is widely acknowledged to be happening in local communities and nationally across every demographic group, it seems. And were plenty of reasons to be depressed and anxious already in the world. And lately it just feels like there's more. They're piling on,
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
And so I'm curious to find out what evidence are you seeing of this crisis in the work of Link House, inpatient or outpatient, and what are some things that people can do to help themselves in these stressful and uncertain times?
I mean, that's a great question. I think I would answer that by starting with, it's important to acknowledge what is happening in our country right now. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. It was a national mental health awareness conference that brought all the key organizations together for the first time in 2 years to talk about what the trends are in our country, what the needs are, and what the federal government is doing and what the private organizations are doing in alignment to address some of the mental health needs. And really what they talked about is a mental health tsunamis right now.
Yeah.
They used the word tsunami, which is a pretty powerful word to use to describe our mental health. And what they were saying is the need for services is outweighing the availability by a large margin.
It's another supply chain difficulty.
It is, and the stuff's not sitting in California. It's all over the country. And so agencies like ours are feeling good that we're here to provide that service. But I know that doesn't help all the other individuals that are waiting for services. So what we have are folks that are in emotional pain that can't just walk into the office and say, "I need help today. Can you help me?" Unfortunately, they're getting, "We can help you in 6 months." And so from the president down, folks are looking at how can we address this issue. So money is trickling in from the federal government, but it's got to come quicker. Resources, there's at least the focus is there. The president, the Senate, the mayors, the governors are all saying, yes, this is a crisis for everybody. So now it's a matter of how do we fill that void. So we at Link House are paying attention to that. We're trying to hire more staff to address the need so that there's not much of a wait list for people that are in need. So I think that's important to recognize nationally. And it will be interesting to see where that goes, because historically mental health has not gotten top bill as a need in the country, not even by a long shot.
Right.
So it's about time. That's great, but we're here to help. Everyone's in that role.
Yeah.
So.
And so we should underline then that one of the things that people can do if they're feeling depressed or anxious or upset in various kinds of ways is call Link House.
Yeah,
fair enough.
And well, I think that yes, but also to keep your appointments. If you are engaged with a mental health provider, is to keep your appointments, go to services, ask for help, because the resources are there. But I think that there's a few factors that are playing into this, and you mentioned it a little bit. The world is not a stable place right now. Globally, we're just coming out of a pandemic, internationally, and Dr. Fauci says the pandemic's over. That's great. So we're kind of reeling from that. Inflation is skyrocketing all of a sudden. I think people are having a difficult time putting gas in their car, buying food. Food pantries are getting overwhelmed. You've got the Russian invasion in Ukraine, which is weighing on everyone's moral consciousness tremendously. And then you have political divisiveness in the country. So, these 4 or 5 large factors, I think, play a role in people's well-being. And so I think you had asked me what people can do. I think first and foremost is to pay attention to their own emotional balance. What is bothering them today? Can they find things that make them happy, that they can engage in meaningful activities that bring them joy and take some of the negative aspects out of life and keep them at bay? Spending time with friends that are meaningful to you. I've been a big advocate for years of spending time in nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I came in for the interview, Sarah, who runs Hub, she, on her day off, was out there gardening. I said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Touching the earth makes me feel good."
Yes.
And I said, "I completely agree with you. I prescribe to people, spend time in nature, go for walks in the park. You've got a great resource. Maudsley is an amazing resource, especially right now with all the flowers blooming. So spending time outside is important. There's a lot of natural resources in our community. Those are all little things, but I think they add up and they're important. Yeah.
And it's important that people remember that they have access to nature. Open your door.
Yes, yes. Open the windows.
Look up.
Yes.
The trees are beautiful right now. Because I think, Gary, sometimes it's easy to forget. We can get so micro-focused on stresses, problems, and worries that we can forget that there are resources more easily at hand. And it's important to do that.
Yes.
Because none of us individually can solve what's going on in the world right now. We can find things to do, bit by bit, but we also need to prioritize taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we'll be less able to think creatively and to find the energy to do any other kinds of advocacy or fundraising or whatever it is.
That's right. That's right. If you take care of yourself, you can't help others.
That's right.
And you have both internal and external factors that you can look towards. I mean, internal factors are what are your own resources internally? Yes. What are your strengths? And not focusing on weaknesses, but what are your strengths as a human being that can help lift you up for yourself and for others? And then the externals are, there are opportunities out there to support your well-being. To look for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember near the beginning of the pandemic, how many people were talking about one of the silver linings of the pandemic was that they had to rediscover nature because you couldn't do things inside.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In my other life, I have a part-time summer job for the trustees at Castle Hill. And wow, memberships at the trustees were way up. They're still way up.
Yes.
The outside tours were way up,
good silver lining.
Which is a good silver lining. And it's I think people are currently perhaps in need to remember what it was like to discover, nature. Oh, yeah,
that's right.
Animals, trees, flowers.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, are there other things that you do to de-stress, Gary?
I like to take walks. I like to bike ride. Just sitting on the grass and just watching the trees move is a meditative experience. I know it sounds a little hokey, but
not at all.
Those things, just watching nature move left and right in a moment of time. Yeah.
And, we're positioned in Greater Newburyport to have easy access to the ocean as well.
Yeah.
And ocean waves and the sound and the rhythmic quality of it. To me, Gary, it feels like it's you touch something that feels like it's above and transcendent from the give and take of human history, which always has its conflictual cycles and feels so conflictual now.
Yes.
And also it's hard to think about what human beings are like and human nature,
Yep.
So I think it's really, for me anyway, even just sometimes remembering to look up at the sky or at trees and go to the beach, go to the woods, and as you put it, the pendulum motion of trees swaying just reminds us that there is another life, another. Go ahead.
That's out of our control, which is important to know. I mean, we as human beings try to control everything in our environment, and nature's going to do what it's going to do. I mean, the other day I was watching some mother and 2 adult geese with their younglings, and the ducklings must have been 2 weeks old. Just watching them move around eating grass was an amazing experience, just to take a minute, and it's very meditative to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the other thing for folks to do is to take a minute to reflect about where they're at with their life right now, what's missing, what are the goals, where are they going to get to today, tomorrow, a year from now, and what's in the way of that. and to really take a concerted effort to say, all right, so what is in the way of my happiness? How can I get there? And then figuring out ways to remove those barriers.
Excellent advice.
Simple
Gary.
enough, right? Yeah.
Simple enough, but also profound.
Yeah.
Because the underlying message there is that any moment in time when you choose to look inward and take stock of your life, you're likely to be able to find things you probably can maneuver.
Absolutely, right. That are in your control.
That are both
Right.
identifying things that are making you unhappy.
Right.
And if it doesn't give you joy, I sound like Marie
Yeah.
Kondo.
So I'll give
if
you
it doesn't give you joy.
I'll give you a good quote. There's a famous psychologist named Albert Ellis.
Oh, yeah.
He's written a lot of books. He's one of the most, I think, most modern, influential psychologists. When I saw him speak in the 80s, someone in the audience said, "So what is the meaning of life, Dr. Ellis?" Without beating an MS, he said, I can't curse because he cursed in his quote. The meaning in life is to have as much bleeping fun as you possibly can all the time without hurting others in the process.
That is an excellent formula.
And so that stays with me, is to have the most fun as possible without hurting others. That's the meaning, and that's what people strive to do.
That has its own profundity,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, Gary, also, you mentioned strengths before, and I spent some time a number of years ago studying positive psychology.
Oh, very good.
And, of course, they have the strengths inventory that you can take online if anybody wants to. But, in positive psychology, they talk about one of the greatest sources of joy and gratification is identifying your strengths and then using them in new and creative ways.
Yes.
Because it makes us feel good.
Yes.
There are a few things, I think, that give us much joy and gratification in life.
That's right.
As learning how to do something really well and then exercising that muscle
Yes.
and mastering something.
Yeah.
And so, these are all resources. Everything we've been talking about are accessible.
Yes, right, and that's
So-
important. And free, on the most
free.
part.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, getting back to Link House, Gary, how are folks doing at Link House these days?
Yeah, I think reasonably well. Again, we're coming out of a pandemic. I think during the last 2.x months, or 2.x years, it was a challenge. I mean, picture living in a cohabitated residential program with 20 to 40 other individuals, having to wear masks at all times.
Yeah.
Not being able to go to live AA or NA meetings or find your sponsor or get supports that you would normally walk out the door to find. Those for 2.5 years were a challenge for most of our residents. And that's now lifted. So the elevator is going up.
Oh, good.
So, we've removed most of the restrictions in the houses. So folks are back at work. They're not wearing masks in the programs. They're going to AA meetings. They're going to NA meetings. They're finding sponsors.
Wonderful.
And many connected through Zoom calls which had its own interesting takes because they were able to see some Zoom AA meetings in other parts of the country or world, which was unique. But it doesn't substitute for being in the same room with others. So from that perspective, things are improving a lot. We encourage our residents to work because it's part of being an adult, and so it's easier to find jobs right now. So that's good. So things are, I think, in a positive direction at the residential programs. And at our clinic in Amesbury, we had to quickly pivot to telehealth within seconds. Overnight we shifted, and now we're trying to figure out what that hybrid model is going to be, both for our staff and for our patients. What do people want? Do they want to come back into the building? Do they want to sit on their phone and do therapy like this? So we're looking at that and trying to figure out what's the best modality, both from the patient's perspective and for our own staff. And so I think that during the pandemic, it was a challenge, but we rose to that, and now we're offering since where are we at? We're in May, so about 6 months ago we came back into the office and we gave folks the option, and I'd say it's about 50-50 still. 50% of the patients still want to be seen remotely. My preference is to come into the office and see someone in person, but we want to go to where the desire is. So we're looking at that. Yeah.
Well, it's good to have those options.
Yes.
So you can actually tailor the mode of therapy, treatment to what the person gives you the feedback they find works best for them.
Yes.
Which is in its own way, a gift of the pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, you read articles of the same thing is happening with employers, kind of trying to figure out what the balance is between in-person work and people. There's a lot of efficiencies, I think, to working from home, or at least there are for a lot of people. And, people have different, and I find sometimes quite strong feelings about Zoom.
Yes.
It's, as you were kind of just
Yes.
indicating, some people really love it, and they find, oh, thank goodness, at least I can see people's faces.
Right.
And some people just hate it.
Right. What's interesting at this conference I was at, I was looking for seminars that talked about technology, aided treatment, and one of the psychologists pointed something out around Zoom or telehealth is that you're not looking through a screen and looking at the person's eyes. You're looking at another screen, looking at their eyes through the screen.
Yes.
And so you're missing that eye-to-eye contact that
Yeah.
we're having right now.
That's right.
And so that was, for me, a salient point in the telehealth conversation.
Right.
But at the same time, it is convenient for people, and we and other providers are giving folks the option.
Yeah.
And I think it's here to stay. It's interesting. I think the pandemic accelerated this conversation around technology-aided treatments.
Yeah.
And there's a large push now for venture capital funds to come into the mental health world and figure out ways of using devices to aid technology to do services in a more fluid way that isn't the 1 hour in-person therapy sessions like what we've had for the last 100 years.
Well, that's fascinating, Gary.
It is fascinating. I'm curious to see where it's all going to go. My training as a psychologist was completely different than where things are moving towards with technology. So it'll be interesting. So.
It's going to be fascinating because people have changed too. People are much more used to using technology, really relying and interacting with technology in a different way.
That's right.
Okay, as that evolves, you have a standing invitation to come back,
Yeah,
Gary.
yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Right.
in the
I'm
future.
actually, it's interesting. I've actually, rather than fight it, I'm actually going to try to embrace it and to learn more about how to bring technology into the office. So there was a psychologist at Columbia University that I met at this conference. I'm going to try to get some grant money and invite him to come spend some time with us to see how we can improve our services using technology rather than fighting it. So I'm trying to be open-minded about it.
Well, that sounds wise.
I'll give you a report in 6 months. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I'll look forward to that. Well, Gary, this has been really quite fascinating, and I'm so impressed with Link House and the work you do and the work Link House has done and how the organization has grown. Is there anything else that you would like the community to know about Link House, the people you serve, how they can become involved, get more information?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I would answer that by saying I'm very mindful of the dedicated staff that we have. And we wouldn't exist without the 40 employees that we have. And some of them are long-term. Some have been there for 10 to 12 to 15 years, which says a lot. It's their passion. So I would say, while I take some credit for the success of the agency, as does the board, it's really the passion of our employees that drive that ship. So I think that would be the message I would share to the community. But in ways of supporting us, sure. Go to our website, see what services we offer, let people know who we are. We're here to help. We do have some funding opportunities throughout the year, so pay attention to that. We're always looking for volunteers, whether it's to cook meals, to help around, to do some physical work around the house, or to do some gardening, or to just spend some time with our residents. If you have a skill set, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's yoga. We'd love to hear from you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. And you do have an excellent website, I must say, full of information about the whole range of services, from the residential services to outpatient counseling groups, all kinds of educational and supportive services. So check it out.
Great.
All right. Well, Gary, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you in person,
Yes, my
live in
pleasure.
studio.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking time to visit with us today.
My
I
pleasure.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
My pleasure,
Good.
Gary. You take care now,
great.
and we'll be back next Thursday morning at 9 on Channel 9 with The Morning Show. Catch us then, everybody. Bye-bye, Gary.
Bye, Mary.